So Mike thought that he would take a chance. He immediately took the flashlight, shielded it, and looked at the ground. And he could see the chicken claw print. The one that I told you about at the beginning. You could see the prints, and it went off to the left cave. But yet there was still other prints that went to the right cave. But there were human footprints that went to the right cave. So we figured that the left cave must be a trap. There was cave people in the left waiting for him, and the townspeople went to the right cave. So we took a chance. But the cave now was getting smaller. Again, he's showing his flashlight, and you could see where there was like scrape marks, where the townspeople were on their hands and knees, because the cave ceiling was coming in on him. It was getting smaller. Mike knew that he had to hurry, because if it got in there, he wouldn't have time or the room to swing the paddle if he had to defend himself. So he started to crawl, pushing the paddle in front of him, thinking that that's how he could defend himself if he was attacked by the Quake people. So he crawled for about another 20 yards, and then he stopped and he listened. He could hear some breathing. Knew that he was close. He must be someplace very, very close by. So, what he did is he grabbed a handful of sand that was on the bottom, and he took a chance. He put his back against the wall, grabbed a handful of sand, immediately turned on the light, and there was two Quake people. He threw the sand in their face, and immediately they were blinded. Their pink eyes shone, but they were blinded by the sand. He then was able to get them and knock them out with the paddle. And he saw the two townspeople right behind him. They were frightened. They didn't know what to do. So Mike went there and he calmed them down and told them, come on, quick, we have to get out of here. There was another rumble from the earth. Some of the stones were falling from the ceiling of the cave. He said, we have to get out of here, otherwise this whole thing is going to collapse, and we're going to be trapped in here forever if we don't go now. So they started to crawl as fast as they could, back out of the cave. They got to the intersection where the left cave went off. They knew they were Quake people in that. And then there was another rumble in the earth, and the rocks were continuing to fall. So he told the townspeople to go ahead, and he kind of waited behind in the right cave, and he could hear a little screeching, because he knew then that the Quake people were coming out of the left-hand cave. So he waited silently in the darkness as he heard the townspeople scramble towards the opening, and then he heard them shuffle, and he knew that the Quake people were very close by. It was pitch black. He didn't know exactly where they were, if they were in front or in back. But he took a chance. The batteries on the lights were just about out. He turned on the light, and there was one right in front of him. He swung the paddle and got him. But then, there was on his back. There was another Quake people, and he could feel the claw digging into his shoulder. But because he was stronger, he took him and he threw him down and knocked him out. And he knew that he had the two. So then he scrambled to the mouth of the cave. And there Fred and Jones met him. Jones was in the boat. And now they got the two townspeople into the small boat. And then Mike got in and Fred. But now, there was 5 of them in this boat. And it was almost sinking. And then there was another rumble. And all of a sudden the river, the hot river, it started to move. And it started to have waves and lap into the boat. And the hot water was in there burning their feet. And they knew that they had to get out because the big one was coming. And they didn't know what they were going to do. So they took the paddle and they started to paddle as fast as they could. They got by one intersection. They hit the side, and a piece of the boat chipped off because it was so brittle. But they still continued to go. They knew that they had to go. And the hot water was lapping into the bottom of the boat, and it was burning their feet. And Jones was taking his hat and trying to get it out. And the townspeople were kind of scared and shaking, and they didn't do anything because they were very frightened people. And they continued to roll as fast as they could. And again, the earth would tremble, and the rocks started to fall from the ceiling. And then there was a big crack in there in the wall and the side. And the river then started to heave more, and the water became more violent. And they knew that the big one was very, very close by. And they had to get out of this mess, because at any minute the earth was going to swallow them up. Now, what to do? There was no sides. They couldn't run. They could see far down. There was a dim light, and they knew that that was where they had their ropes to climb out. But they still had about 200 yards to go on the hot river. The boat was getting smaller because as it hit the side of the hot river, it would chip pieces away, and more water was coming in. But they continued to row, and their feet were being burned by the hot water as they rowed up. And the lapping of the water became more violent every quake that they had, every time the earth shook. And then the unthinkable happened. They hit a rock in the middle of the hot river. It wasn't there before, but one of the earthquakes made it come up out, and the boat split. One of the townspeople almost fell in, but they stood on top of the big rock that was in the middle. But there their boat was. It sank down. And here the five of them were in the middle of the hot river with the earth shaking them around them. They didn't know what to do. They had more than 100 yards to go in order to get to where their ropes were. They could see their ropes now hanging down from up on top. They had 100 yards to go. There was scalding hot water. And here the five of them were standing on this rock that had come up out of the hot river. What were they to do? There seemed to be no way out. They were trapped. The Quake people have gone back into their hole, but now the elements were their enemy. Mother Nature and their hot water. There seemed to be just no way out. How can they get out of this life-threatening predicament?